Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Skye and Raasay Area Committee. Fáilte go committeeach an Sealan Scianach agus Raasay. Welcome to Julie McClelland, who is going to be our clerk for today. Alistair has other things on, so he is not with us this morning. So a big welcome, Julie, to Skye and Raasay Area Committee.
Thank you very much.
As always, everyone's got their protocol in front of them, just in terms of the meeting being online, and this meeting again has been recorded and will be uploaded to the Highland Council's YouTube page. So we'll just start the agenda. I don't think there are any apologies for absence. It's such a small area committee. There's 4 of us, so I can see everybody is here. So there is no apologies for absence. Is there any declarations of interest?
Yes, Chair. We have declarations from Mr Munro in respect of item 5, non-financial, as the Director of Kilmuir Community Trust, which is now in the ownership of Kilmuir Hall and will be hosting a Newton room for local school children. Also, item 7, non-financial, again as the Director of Kilmuir Community Trust, which has a project on the list at Appendix 1, and also financial on the basis of his wife being a teacher. And having applied the test, Mr Munro has confirmed that he will remain in the meeting for both items.
Okay, thank you, Julie. Thanks, Callum. Any other declarations? No? No? Okay, item 3, the minutes of the last meeting. They were circulated and are before us, and they were approved at the Highland Council meeting on the 24th of June. So again, that's there just to be noted. So our first presentation of the day, we've got quite a few presentations this morning. The first is from Police Scotland and their local committee performance report. And we welcome to the Skye and Raasay Area Committee for the first time, Inspector Ross McCartney, who's taken over from Linda Allen, who's moved on to other things. So a big welcome, Ross, to Skye and Raasay. I believe you've moved into Portree, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to be here. And good morning to everybody. I think some faces I know and others I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. So I'm here, I'm in Portree, and I look forward to meeting each and every one of you going forward. So yes, as you said, Chair, I'm the temp inspector for Police Scotland in Portree at the moment. I'm hoping to go through a promotion panel at the end of the year, and if I put in a good performance, then hopefully cement that and make it permanent. So, with regards to the figures, so the document, I'm not entirely sure who's got sight of the performance document that's come out. Will that have been shared with everyone in the meeting?
Yeah, we've all got it in front of us. So if you just want to speak to it, and then members probably will have some questions or comments after that.
Of course, Chair, thank you. So the document covers the 1st of April 2020 to the 31st of March 2021, and the first priority would be road safety and road crime, and the intention is obviously a collaborative approach to reduce casualties and crime on our roads, working together with partners to do that. So the first target on there, reduce the number of people killed on the roads in Skye and Raasay, showing 0 for all of the year to dates. I'm not entirely sure why that figure is 0 in there, but the number of people detected for drunk driving offences. The year to date, so previous comparing with 2019 to 2020. It was a number of 45. Previous year, 20 to 21, is 22, which is a decrease in 23. And that figure there includes failure to provide specimen of breath. And there's also that includes the festive safety campaign information below, which you'll see below there. The campaign ran between the 1st of December 2020 and the 2nd of January 2021. And Police Scotland's committed to achieving the Scottish Government's 2020 casualty reduction targets. And in doing that, we do that through being out there, being on the roads, collaborative approach to being out there with the DVLA, DVSA, and setting up these checkpoints that are well known in an attempt to identify anybody who may be carrying out drink or drug driving offences. Moving on to the speeding offences detections. Again, so it was 2019 to 20, the figure between the 2 years is up 117, and that's a result of the increased proactive patrols. We have Operation Cedar, which came into effect, which is to challenge, educate, detect and reduce. And it's, as it says there, it builds on established practices and will continue to focus on various agencies working in partnership to reduce the number of people killed and seriously injured in our area. Operation Cedar, multi-agency approaches we've touched on, and it is mainly driver education and improving the behaviour of drivers of all ages behind the wheel. You'll most likely have seen on social media that the police, mainly the road policing units, are out there, and you'll see even driver awareness in relation to cyclists and where drivers are positioning their vehicles, and it's quite an eye-opener, I think, for some people as to how much space you actually have to give cyclists out there on the road, and not just rushing by them. So that's out there, it's well documented on social media, and a continuing piece of work. Also, as a result of those proactive patrols and targeting specific local concerns, you'll see that the number of people detected for use of mobile phones is up 2 for the last year, and detected for seatbelt offences is up 1. We've touched on Operation Cedar and Driver Engagement North, which is a multi-agency initiative that launched in Inverness in 2019, and it's through use of an interactive driver simulator designed to access and highlight participants' reactions. So I'm not aware of that being used in our area, but certainly something that I can look into in the future. Visitor management also, again, it's been well documented that visitor management this year was a priority, being out there with the year we've had in relation to COVID-19. The highlight was on how that was affecting us at the time, and then when restrictions started to decrease, if you like, how that would affect us in relation to visitor management. That forms part of the stats that you can see on there as well, being out and engaging with people from a visitor management point of view, but also any other driver education opportunities were taken. We're moving on to the next section, serious and organised crime. So the intention is to reduce the harm caused by serious and organised crime, including cyber-related crime, and the objective is to work alongside partners to safeguard the Highland area by taking all opportunities to prevent crime and make the Highland area a hostile environment for serious and organised crime groups, to improve the outcomes for individuals and communities and reduce offending through prevention, early intervention and diversion, in support of our partners in the local authority and NHS via Highland Alcohol and Drug Partnership Strategy. We look to direct those who are substance dependent towards recovery through prevention, treatment and support services with partners to reduce the instances of substance misuse in our communities. So divisional operations, there are divisional operations ongoing to develop intelligence and obviously an investigation into drug supply and the use in educational establishments throughout the division. So we're talking, this is what we're school talks here, getting in to school and educating people on, drug addiction and the effects that it can have on that person, families, communities. With regards to the intelligence that comes in, it is monitored on a daily basis, and it's passed out to the local area inspectors such as myself. Any intelligence of note or anything that we can work to develop, again to tackle any emerging trends. Also, organised crime. Coming under that bracket would be the recent online and electronic frauds. It says here, which have targeted local businesses and charities throughout the Highlands, resulting in a loss of substantial amounts of money. That would be, you're online receiving these scam emails, or we have reported, or we have taken report of an increase in crimes as well, where it appears that organised crime groups or perpetrators of this type of offence are managing to intercept email accounts or emails of businesses, send out what appears to be a genuine bill for that company for some work that they've done, and defrauding people out of money. So there is a lot of work going on in the background in relation to that, trying to identify these where the perpetrators are, where their online presence is, and what they are, trying to identify them essentially and get them brought to justice for that. It says here there's been 6 Misuse of Drugs Act 1971 search warrants executed within the previous year in our area. Moving on from that, acquisitive crime. Again, intention to reduce crime through preventing offending and reducing reoffending. So we're looking to work with partners there, identifying any acquisitive crime types and sharing information between partners, but supporting education, prevention, diversionary enforcement activity linked to acquisitive crime, and develop work with targets. So the numbers here for or between 19 to 20 and 20 to 21, the number of theft by house break-ins in our area have reduced by 2 over that year, and that is including theft by house break-ins and attempted house break-ins with intent to steal. So any person that's attempted to break into a dwelling with the intention to steal, that's down by 2. Number of theft by shopliftings is down by 10, and that's a reduction in the number of retail premises trading during COVID-19 lockdown period. So we will have had premises which wouldn't have been open at the time. So there has been a reduction in available premises, and we believe that's why we've seen a reduction in the theft by shopliftings there by 50%. Number of theft of motor vehicles is actually increased by 2, and theft by motor vehicles could be anything from a stranger theft, if you like, motor vehicles parked up and having been stolen by an unknown person, or a motor vehicle that's been taken without somebody's consent, so known to the owner of the motor vehicle has taken the vehicle and they've not had consent to do so. Theft from within motor vehicles has reduced by 3, and again it says here that the COVID-19 lockdown in Skye and Raasay obviously brought out and continues to bring out the best in the majority of the population. And in my short time having been here, just seeing, I've met with a few community members and seeing the work that has gone into supporting the community by all involved is tremendous. And you can see that there's massive amounts of work, and as I say, still ongoing for that community support and to engage with community members. It should, however, be noticed that it remains important to highlight that less scrupulous individuals may seek to exploit people's vulnerabilities during such difficult times. National and local online messaging encourage people to think about their personal safety. So we'll have all seen the social media posts going out there, encouraging individuals to be vigilant about who they engage with and who they accept assistance from. But as I say, having seen locally the signposting to local community groups and trusts who are out there helping people, they're doing a fantastic job to engage with locals. Moving on, antisocial behaviour, violence and disorder. The intention of this would be engage with the public and communities to reduce and prevent crime, work with partners to share information, support education, prevention, diversionary and enforcement measures linked to harmful alcohol consumption, maintain robust procedures around licensed premises, and support victims of violent crime by working with partners to improve service provision and prevent repeat victimisation. Again, as I touched on before, with the COVID-19 pandemic, it will have seen a lot of licensed premises being unable to operate, open full stop, or operate to their full licensing agreements. As a result of this, licensed premises checks alone have seen a decrease in the last year by 577. So the number of checks that have been carried out in the year 2021 is 217. That number we expect to increase going forward as licensed premises get back to some form of normality operating. Our officers will be in there engaging with licensed premises to make sure that as they get scaled back up to full capacity, is there anything that they are, support they're needing by way of the police? Is there anything that we can do to support them and make sure that they know that we are here to be called on should they have any issues? Moving on, increase one of the targets, increase the number of offences reported for the possession, supply, or being concerned with the supply of controlled substances, and that has been increased by 5 in relation to the last year's figures. Number of detections for drug supply, production, and cultivations. So we have, as I say, that identifying and dealing with drug supply offences has increased by 5. Reduce the number of breach of the peace, threatening and abusive behaviour crimes. That there has been a reduction in that, and the reduction number is 10. So we're 10 down from the previous year. Reduced the occurrences of common assault. We have 4, so there have been 4 less occurrences of common assault recorded over the last year compared to previous. Number of assaults on emergency workers is down 1 from the previous year, with the most important factor in that being the detection rate is 100%. So 100% of individuals, perpetrators of assaults on emergency workers have been identified and dealt with. Reduced the instance of vandalism, and there has been a reduction in 17 recorded vandalisms compared to last year, and that includes malicious mischief. And there are currently no premises at stage 3 in Skye and Raasay for noisy behaviour through Operation Notebook or in relation to Notebook. There are no premises recorded, and number of antisocial behaviour orders in place. There are no antisocial behaviour orders in place for Skye and Raasay. Number of stop searches, 72 number of stop searches conducted totally, 20 to 21, and that is 30, the number of 30 between 20 and 21, and that's positive, 30 positive searches. And positive search is any search where an item an item has been recovered. Possession of same implies criminality on part of the individual. This could be drug searches, weapon searches, or such like, and seizures as well. So we have the alcohol seizures. It doesn't give me a number here or a breakdown as to how many of those searches were alcohol seizures or drug seizures or weapons. Protecting vulnerable people is the next priority. Intention: support people considered vulnerable through working with partners. As corporate parents, we look to obviously deliver the Highland champs and the strategy with partners. We'll focus on safeguarding communities, address emerging issues through prevention intervention. Protecting vulnerable people. Looking into this, the number of Class 2 sexual crimes that's been recorded is up by 4 in the last year. 4 more than the previous year have been recorded, and that includes historical offences. So victims having the confidence to come forward and report historical offences, and you'll see there that Police Scotland did undergo a national inspection by Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary in Scotland in relation to hate crime within Division Highlands and Islands, being identified as one of 3 focused divisions, and that report can be seen online. In relation to missing persons, Police investigated 113 reports of missing persons in the South Highland Area Command during this reporting period, and it says that these are not available to be broken down just due to the system that we use, but the figure does include missing persons in mountains also, and in these instances Police Scotland rely heavily on the assistance of mountain rescue teams and the fantastic job that they do, always being available and being out there to provide assistance. Terrorism and public order, to prevent, pursue, protect, prepare through collaborative preparedness, and that objective is to prevent through work, or strengthen, prevent work, with partners and institutions, with partners, and getting the word out there, engaging with any identified, potential extremist individuals or organisations, and getting education out there to prevent and deter through multi-agency planning. It says here that the workshop to raise awareness for Prevent, which is called RAP. RAP is an interactive facilitated workshop aimed at frontline staff such as police, social services, probation, education and health staff. It seeks to support staff to recognise that using their existing expertise and professional judgment may be able to recognise potentially vulnerable individuals in relation to counter-terrorism and domestic extremism. Work is ongoing to develop contacts in the South Highland Command area in order to run workshops for relevant staff. That's the end of the report, but certainly what I would say is, as we've touched, or as I've touched on, these figures, some of them can be accounted in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic, being that premises have been shut, visitor management, the numbers have been lower. What I will say is that cops have been out there and will continue to be out there engaging with the public, providing that support that we can provide, and ultimately working towards all of these pre-arranged targets. So I would like to open up for any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Inspector, for that. It's a very detailed report. Yeah, I'm sure members will have a few questions or comments. So go over to John Finlayson first, and then Callum McClyde.
Okay, thanks, Ross. I mean, a lot of the inquiries that we get is about visitor management, and you do report that the visibility of the police. We quite often get told that maybe they're not as visible as they should be, and so it's really just round about issues like parking. Because there seems to be, when there's a parking nuisance, I think there's a bit of confusion about who is responsible. So it might be helpful for us as members, maybe to get a clear indication of when it becomes a criminal offence. And I'm thinking of things like parking on pavements, etc., etc. And I have been in touch with the local police about various issues, but I'm not convinced that that we always get the outcome maybe that we desire. So maybe it might be useful to get a summary of what police can do and cannot do in terms of traffic offences. I think that might be helpful. And the second point is, we know that there's quite a bit of antisocial behaviour towards retail workers across the country. Is that something you've noticed in Skye? Have any of our retail workers been subject to abuse that you're aware of? So thanks for that, Ross.
No, thank you for your questions, Councillor. So to touch on the first point, parking, we hold a weekly. I appreciate all parking doesn't come in visitor management, so I'm going to put that out there. But what I will say is, there is a weekly visitor management meeting which is ongoing at the moment, which over the course of which parking is discussed. Any emerging trends are discussed, especially at our local hotspots and any issues, and we look to go with that collaborative approach to deal with them. In relation to issues of parking complaints, the police is a police matter where the parking is deemed to be obstructive or dangerous in any way. So I would advise any member of the public or anybody seeing any parking that is dangerous or obstructive. Is it on the carriageway? Is it bringing a carriageway down to one lane, say? Or is it on the pavement? Is it preventing people from passing by? And we always give it, people who are using these public paths or public footways. We're not just talking people out for a walk. We have wheelchair users. We have parents out there with prams and stuff like that. If they're struggling to get by cars that are parked on the pavement, I would advise them to call the police. That is very much a police matter. We'll come out, and what we would look to do there is identify who the owner of the vehicle is, engage with them as early as possible, get the vehicle moved as soon as possible, and if that engagement doesn't happen, then we'll look to get the vehicle uplifted because it is causing that obstruction. So anything that's deemed to cause an obstruction, footpath, roadway, is most certainly a police matter. Double yellow lines, etc. I'm sure Shane is on here. Shane is very well versed in parking, and he'll be able to come in on that later on. But I know that his ladies and gents are out there as well from a parking enforcement point of view, and he's always available for phone calls in. In relation to the second point, Councillor, I am not aware of no instances of volatile behaviour or that abuse towards our local shop assistants and workers has been brought to my attention. But again, I would just like to say that from a Police Scotland point of view, from a local point of view, it's in no way tolerated. These people provide an essential service. They work hard, they put in the hours. You only have to go across Portree to the square, you're in the bakery or whatever it may be, and you see the queues are out the door. These people are absolutely flat out. So I would advise anybody, any instance of abusive behaviour, they're not expected to deal with it. Give the police a phone and we'll come out there and again ensure that support's there and we engage with these perpetrators.
Thank you, Inspector Callum MacLeod. And then Callum Monroe.
Good morning, Inspector, and good luck with your new role.
Good morning, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you. Just on the subject of speeding, it's often a subject that arises particularly in relation to the trunk road. And I just wondered if it would be helpful if we could at some point get some kind of breakdown of where the kind of hot spots are in relation to either being trunk road speeding or B class, just to get an idea of the scale and where the problems exist. The second question really was regarding, I suppose it ties into vulnerable people, and just what support with the ever increasing sad kind of inevitability of social media bullying and often terrible behaviour that goes on online. What advice can be given, what methods for combating this, particularly local, and of course out with the reliance of internet companies. Thanks.
Thank you for your questions, Councillor, and the points. The breakdown of the figures, that's something that I'll take forward to see if we can actually, if we can get a breakdown of the figures, B roads versus trunk roads. I'm certainly aware that the local police officers are out, and across South Island as a whole, there has been a number of officers or extra officers trained in use of the speed handheld detection equipment, and we asked them to get out there and feature that into the patrol plan when they're not responding to incidents. We asked them to be out there in these hot spots or just on the roads where we're receiving the complaints of speeding and get checks done. Also, the road policing, we had 2 officers up on motorcycles for 3 days last week, and I've seen planned dates when there are even more officers scheduled to be up on a regular basis. So I'll have a look at that and see if we can actually get a breakdown of the figures to show where the hotspots are. In relation to support, obviously it is worrying how easy it is for persons to use these online platforms, which are so readily available to bully or even attempt to, we're touching on, defraud. People. There is no. It's no secret that some of these online frauds will involve the fraudster, or whatever you would like to call them, for want of a better term, trying to put the victim in a vulnerable position through that communication, and then try and exploit them through that way. When it is reported to the police, I'll say we do everything possible to identify the users of these email addresses, of the chat forums, wherever it may be, in an attempt to identify the persons that are carrying out such behaviour to put a stop to it. We reassure the victim, give the victim safety advice, or the person who's reporting it to us. There are loads and loads of online support networks that anybody can be signposted to. I need to actually have a look at them to see which ones would be suggesting, but there's a lot of online support forums anyway, and we'd advise that don't engage with anybody you don't know, especially in these chat forums, and if you do engage with anybody and you get, always be on your guard for any sort of exploitive behaviour, if you like, or that person trying to lead you into a vulnerable position. We'd advise, as I say, being on guard all of the time, and if you've got any concerns, seek support, or if you have been exploited, report it to the police.
Thanks, Inspector. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Inspector McCartney.
Morning,
Welcome to Skye and Raasay, and thanks for the comprehensive way you've taken us through your report. I just noticed, in terms of speeding, huge increase last year in people detected speeding. Obviously, it's a COVID year, a lot less traffic on the road for much of that time. Obviously shows that your officers have been enforcing and really ramped up enforcement, I would suggest. I just wonder if you'll be able to see, if you can sustain this, or will the behaviour be altered because of your, the enforcement work you're doing. That's interesting to see how that works out. Inspector, I live in Kilmuir, which is very north of the loop, the sort of Trotternish loop. One of the things which concerns me is not generally tourists drive through, they take their time, look at the views, but one or two tourists, they drive the loop at a very high speed. Now, up in Kilmuir, there's some very long straight bits. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 big luxury cars coming through here at really excessive speeds, and I know we're 20 miles out of Portree where I stay here, but it really is concerning for children, other pedestrians, cyclists. So that's a concern for me. I wouldn't let my children out on a bike, go out me with them all summer. The other point, and Councillor Finlayson has picked up on this, is to do with visitors and visitor management. I think it's important at the end of this season that we reflect on how things have gone, and that the Police Scotland will be part of that, and that you can feed into a review of the year, see what we can learn, and hopefully take that forward to next year. But thanks, Inspector, it's good to meet you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for your points there, Councillor, and certainly making me aware of the issues in Kilmuir, something that I'll take forward. There'll be no getting around the fact that with the current or the previous year that we've had, demand for policing, it's obviously it's remained at a level where the officers are expected to be out there, and I wouldn't say there's been a let up on police demand. But what I will say is I think there's been a definite noticeable facility, if you like, or timing where cops can get out there and do the speed checks that we need them to be. Going forward, as the restrictions ease, I can imagine that there will be an increase on demand for all services here, but especially ourselves. There's OpCEDAR, which we've spoke about, which the road policing team are out, and as I say, we had 2 officers up last week, and I've seen the dates in the diary for them coming back up again at 3 days at a time and being out there and doing the speed checks. We've had, and engaging with drivers, we've had increased officers trained in the use of the handheld speed detection equipment as well, which is excellent, because it gives us, certainly gives us a greater number of personnel to be able to deploy out there doing speed checks and driver engagement. So going forward, you're absolutely right. It'll be a key focus of mine to make sure that in any downtime that we have, we are out there engaging with drivers, making sure that the road, the streets that we live in are safe for kids to be out there on their bikes, and that we are doing everything possible we can to engage with the drivers that are using our road, local or not. What I would say is that I'm aware of we do have calls come in with regards to any clubs of cars, supercars, as you touched on there. I was aware of one last week, and what I'll say is as soon as those calls come out, it's made known to every cop in the area, and these cops do their absolute best to trace the drivers. If we get an indication of where they're going, and even a registration or a few registrations or identities of the cars, they do their absolute best to engage with these drivers, to say to them, enjoy our area, and come up and see the sights, stick to the speed limits and drive safely.
Thank you, Inspector. Just following on from that, you mentioned driver education, which is key and important, and hearing you saying about stopping more drivers, because I think we've all been here before in terms of speed. I mean, we're seeing in built-up areas or urban areas the reduction in going from 30 miles per hour or 40 miles per hour to the 20 mile per hour speed zones. But we're not seeing too much, say, like out in the A87, for example, like outside Broadford. Callum has brought it up often over the years, just the speed of traffic coming through these areas, like through Sconser as well. And we've campaigned, we've lobbied, we've worked with Transport Scotland. I mean, sometimes in the past they have said that, not much can be done unless there's a fatality, which again is not maybe the answer people want to hear, because prevention is much better. But I think there's a piece of work still to be done there, and I'm sure we would all look forward to just working with you on that, because lobbying and campaigning, particularly in the areas that we could mention, and we again, like a lot of community people, we know the hotspots in terms of where speed is an issue, or where people complain to us as much as they'll probably complain to you as well. So that's one thing. The other thing I was going to bring up, and it's in your report, and again you mentioned it about in terms of drugs, in terms of education as drugs, and we're seeing over the last week while that Scotland is now the highest, or has the highest death rate in Europe for drugs. And we all know in our local communities too that drugs is such a big problem, and it's probably a hidden world, but it's there and it's big. And I just wonder, is there a more strategic approach that could be taken with all partners going forward? Because the more I hear about what's going on, even locally about drugs, it's a huge issue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So most definitely the collaborative approach is one for myself anyway, that is essential in identifying, because not all, as you say, you've touched on it being a hidden world there. Not everybody will come to us or speak to my officers if they have an issue, a problem, or even suffering from addiction, or know somebody who as supplying drugs, but they may speak to partner agencies when they're engaged, you know, in relation to other issues. So a collaborative approach, I would be I'd be keen to push forward on that, and I'm here. I'd be quite happy to link in with anybody and go forward to tackle that.
Thank you, Inspector. I don't think there's any more questions or comments. We just want to wish you well in your new role, and we look forward to working with you going forward. And we just want to thank you and all your officers for the work that they do in our locality, and we appreciate it. So we ask that you pass on our thanks to your officers as well. So thanks for joining us this morning.
I will. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to everybody for the questions and your time. As I say, I'm here in Portree Police Station. Yeah, feel free, get in touch, and going forward, I look forward to working with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Inspector.
Good morning.
Okay, item 5 on our agenda is a verbal presentation on the Newton rooms, and I think we're being joined by Peter Finlayson. Good morning, Peter.
Morning, folks. I'm just checking you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. I'll just hand over to you. Okay,
I'm conscious that today it's just myself. Apparently today is a holiday for HIE staff, so another public body, but apparently it's August 30th is some sort of bank holiday, but not for the rest of us. So I'll just be on my own today. I'm also conscious that 3 of the 4 of you actually listened to most of this, or back in earlier in the year. So I'll maybe just do a quick sort of update of where we are in terms of delivery to the Skye and Raasay in terms of the Newton rooms. But I'll quickly, I'm quite happy just to quickly share a screen just with a quick couple of slides, because we've got 1 or 2 pictures there as well. If we can, I can just do that, and if folk can see anything yet. Working out a few details is what my screen says.
Yeah, it's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got that. Okay, so really, I suppose in a sense, just quickly today, then the Highland Science Skills Academy in Skye and Raasay, and we talked last time about the fact that we have 4 rooms currently round Highland, in Fort William, Inverness, Dingwall, and in Thurso. And one of the things is obviously delivery to Highland is a fairly scattered area, and Skye and Raasay particularly there, and how we actually deliver in that area. And we had looked at, is there a possibility of a central location? And one of the areas, as John will know, down in Callacan, we had been looking at was sorry, somebody coming on the screen there, was looking at, say, Maui down in Callacan. Nothing has come of that at present, and therefore what we're actually looking at is a sort of pop-up version. So I will jump on to that. One of the things we're sort of looking for is just that equality of STEM provision round the whole of Highland. We have, or there's a perception that there's plenty of things happening in Inverness, etc., and even up in sort of the north, but with Doonray or that, and maybe less on the west coast. So one of the things is about getting that equality of provision across the area. Second is just that awareness of STEM careers. That's one of the key sort of driving forces of the Highlands Science Skills Academy, is actually making youngsters aware of what STEM careers are out there. And the other is, attracting STEM experts to the region. I think if we have this network of rooms, we often, I've said this before, we get folk wanting to come to the Highlands, but maybe wanting to come to 1 or 2 schools particularly. They always want to come from May to September, and it's getting this much more holistic approach. So if they come and they deliver to everyone. And that's something that we're really trying to encourage there. I'll just jump back quickly again, because I'm conscious, I think it was maybe Callum, wasn't it, the last one. The Science Skills Academy, it's a collaboration between, as I say, HIE, Skills Development Scotland, Highland Council, NHS, High Life Highland, and UHI. And it actually predates the sort of city region deal funding. So we had this on the go. What the city region deal funding was, it really gave the sort of catalyst that allowed us to plough forward and get the rooms up and going. It's interesting to note that actually some of the other authorities who are putting in their sort of region deals, like the Islands and Argyll and Bute, are actually looking now to include Newton rooms in these bids that they're putting to Scottish and UK government. So maybe at some point, and I think the vision for the future is that the whole sort of Highlands and Islands would have an approach similar to this. Okay, so I'll jump forward onto this. And I suppose what we're looking for then, if we do have these sort of pop-up rooms, and I'll come on to just where we're going to be in a minute, we still want that high quality experience for the youngsters in this area. One of the things that we talked about last time was, you know, if you are talking about STEM careers, it's not just that experience on the day. It's actually about, you know, what a youngster decides they're going to do with their life is not just predicated on that experience of the day. It's how their parents, their carers actually engage as well. And one of the things we're quite keen to therefore do is actually to bring these Newton room modules into communities. And you'll see in a second just where we're going to try and run that round there. Having said that, we're still keeping that if you know, for pupils in Portree or the Plockton ASGs, that they will still be offered a visit to one of the Newton rooms as well. And I think, as we said last time, so it's maybe the best of both worlds, visit to an actual Newton room, but also a pop-up version as well. Okay, so the modules that we're looking to run, and this, what I'm going to call it the sort of autumn term, but really from now until into November. So for primary and primary 6, and we started last week with the Gaelic School in Tree. So primary 6, we're looking at delivering it, so it's a whole day on robotics and mathematics, and again, what careers can be involved with these approaches. With primary 7, it's a salmon and aquaculture module for the whole day. And again, there are various videos that are produced that allow the youngsters, as well as doing the activities, but also to see what careers, and as I said, the folk, Emma and April, have produced these videos. They've used young people who are actually actively employed in these spheres to demonstrate what they did at school, what they're doing now in terms of the actual jobs. Again, it's creating that sort of thought process for the youngsters to actually think, oh, maybe I could actually do that. So again, just at that early stage there, that there is a possibility of, because one of the key aims is always to think about keeping our young folk in the region. In S1, they're looking at the sort of module on renewable energy, and then in S2, biofuels. And you'll see some other things there that during, you know, as I say, that this was all due to launch about 18 months ago, and we had full bookings, and obviously circumstances have dictated a slightly different approach, and the fact that we're had to delay. But you'll also see some other things there that were delivered during the sort of lockdown. That there's space modules, sort of mini modules. There's one in peatlands which went to a lot of secondary schools. Maths weeks, outdoor maths, and the sort of build back better activities that the Science Skills Academy staff were doing on a number of schools. I suppose the actual, if you were, this is a picture in one of the actual Newton rooms, it's to try and get that sort of slightly wow factor there that again makes youngsters start to think, oh, this is maybe something that really is something I want to think about. So again, we want to try and replicate that in the actual pop-up Newton rooms. So this, I think, was a post on Facebook, very into their social media, about starting the sort of delivery in Skye and Raasay last Monday. And for the first, well, let me just check the actual dates, but you'll see here there for the first 2 to 3 weeks. They're going to be based in the Shinty Club, and again, I suppose that's one of the things that you know, it's a sort of privately run venue. So again, it's maybe we don't have the same control over things like cleaning or that, and that was a slight issue last week, which all has been resolved. But we'll see some of the pictures just in a minute there. But again, so they're going to be in the Portree Shinty Club for about 3 weeks. Then over to Lochduich Community Hall, again there for doing delivery, and all the schools from the Plockton ASG, so Kyle, Kalaki, and even Applecross, I think, coming all the way down there to spend a day there. And then up to, let me just see, up to Kilmuir, Began, Salmore for the schools, and then back to Portree again to deal with, I think it's McDermott and maybe Carbus, Razzie, other schools that are not in that first tranche. So that they aim to hit every single youngster from P6 to S2 will have a full day in this sort of pop-up venue and experience, as I say, one of these Newton modules. And I think just what they're aiming at the moment, as I say, I think I said already, P6 is going to be robotics and mathematics, P7 salmon and aquaculture, S2 biofuels, and S1, as I say, that they're trying to fit in as well, the renewable energy one there. So these are some quick pictures, because I guess at the end of the day, it's how it looks and getting that sense of, yep, this is something that's a wee bit different. So these are pictures from last week. Actually, I think these were actually on the Gaelic School in Portree's own Facebook page. So we took some of these from there. Again, the feedback from the school and the feedback from the staff delivering was that the kids really had a good day. But you know, at the end of the day, it's got to be more than just a good day. It's got to be that sort of sense of them actually having a thinking about, right, STEM as in terms of careers, or at least sowing that seed, which is really all the important aspect of it. So yeah, so as I say, I'll stop presenting there. Just some quick ones, because I sense, you know, we had the discussion last time about the merits of the sort of pop-up versus a permanent fixture in Skye and Raasay. And as I say, I think this is in a sense a test, and I was speaking to April Conroy, who's our STEM engagement manager, and there's no doubt that I think in an ideal world, when we've got 29 ASGs scattered around Highland, you might have permanent fixtures in all of them. But the reality is, of course, that funding will dictate that there's only a certain limit to what you can do, and it's looking to see what the sort of best compromise can be around about that. Okay, John, you got a question no doubt for me?
Was that an inevitability in your statement there, Peter?
I suspect so.
Okay, yeah, so very clearly, obviously, and I think you highlighted the quality of STEM provision. So that's key. Yeah. You know, we are a rural authority, and I do know how hard you've worked to try and get some sort of permanent location in Skye and Raasay, and we need to continue to do that. Yeah. And I might even have some interesting ideas for you that I'll forward on to you, Peter. So, but I think, I mean, what you have shown is that at this minute in time, we can't do that. So the pop-up version is something I think that seems to be working. So we congratulate you on doing that. I suppose, you know, we need to consider, as you say, the sustainability and what happens going forward. So we need to look at all options. And again, I'm thinking about Portree High School. I mean, I know the role has declined, and you know, so maybe that's something that we can look at going forward. You know, we're taking something to Education Committee on Thursday about the closure of Uig Primary School. That again might be something that we can investigate. But I think, as you say, the important thing is that STEM careers are so important for our young people, and we need to make sure that the young people of Skye and Raasay have the same opportunities as those in the bigger centres of population. And that's why I'm delighted that they do get a chance to visit a STEM facility, to see, you know, as you say, the wow factor, and hopefully that'll give them all the ambition, give us all the ambition of making sure we do at some stage in the future get our own Newton room here in Skye and Raasay. So thanks for that presentation.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, just in response to that, I suppose, John, I think we're still feeling our way, and it's one of these things that I said actually about the community, because I think, for instance, and I know Callum there is obviously from Kilmuir, that actually it'd be interesting to see one of our partners is Highland, who are actually creating their own STEM team. And really what they might be looking at is then for the evenings that you might have something on in the evening that the community can come into, because there's no doubt that youngsters will be more influenced, well, they'll certainly be influenced by the activities during the day, but if you also get on board the parents and actually saying, well, look at what's on offer here. And I think one of the difficulties having, because we're not going to get parents to go to, Dingwall for an evening, and even in Skye and Raasay, if we had the room in Callacan, would parents come from Kilmuir? Would they come from Lochcarron? I'm not sure. Maybe they would, but that's maybe something we have to have a think about. But yeah, I think we are still looking at permanent locations. Portree High School is still one of them, because I'm very conscious that the role is quite different from when I came back to Highland. It's down significantly. There's just that bit about we've always veered away from actually placing it in a school, because it maybe removes a wee bit of that wow factor and taking it out of that. Ideally, in a place like Maui or even UHI from one of the buildings, having a room somewhere is something that we're actively looking at, not just in Skye and Raasay, but even in Badenoch and Strathspey, for whom, rather than them having to travel to Inverness, can they do it in the locality? Okay, I think maybe Callum, you had your hand up first. Yeah.
Callum Monroe, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. Just that's interesting to hear that Highland are looking at a STEM team.
Yeah.
No, I've nothing to add to Councillor Finlayson's remarks. Really, it's a learning process, isn't it? We're just going to learn as we go along, and it's important that we sow that seed and just hope that things go well. I'm looking forward to hearing about it from our own, certainly our son's P7.
Yeah.
So hopefully, hope things go well and it'll lead to something sustainable going forward. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor MacLeod.
Hi, Peter. Thanks for that. I think it's just an observation, really. It's great to see the subjects, technologies with green targeted subjects, potentially offering inspiration for youngsters. I think that's really important for youngsters going forward, understanding the major challenges and opportunities as the next custodians of our planet. So great, thanks for that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, and I must just actually say that I just remembered as well, Emma and April said, there is an open invitation for all four of you, the four councillors, to attend any of the actual events. So if obviously it's in Kilmuir, your locality, or that would be the simplest, but it's obviously in Portree there for the next few days. So just drop either myself an email or whatever if you want to attend any of the, just to get a sense of what it's about would be great.
Thank you. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for all the work you do in this project. I think it's very creative and very visionary and well needed in not only our locality but across the whole of Highland. So thanks for your presentation and for your invite, and I'm sure we'll take you up in that. So thanks for joining us this morning.
Okay, thank you. Cheers, folks.
Thanks. Okay, members, item 6 is our Area Road Capital Monitoring Progress Report, and we're being joined by Gordon MacDonald. I'll just hand over to you, Gordon, and I'm sure there'll be a few questions and comments after your presentation.
Okay, morning, Chair, morning, members. The report before you is the progress report on the Area Capital Programme. Members, you agreed at your meeting in March the programme that we're been undertaking for you. If I can just recap on the allocation of funding for that, our baseline allocation of 7.2 million with the council granted us £578,000. The 10 million or the 20 million allocation, 10 million for this year, granted us a further 400,000, and your own ward allocation, which came out of the additional 20 million of 100,000, basically gave us a total of just over £1 million, or just under £1.1 million. We're delighted at the additional allocation that we've received, and basically it has effectively doubled what we can achieve on a normal year. Can I start with an apology? I note in the report that there's reference made to Appendix B and Appendix A. Unfortunately, the report, it's Appendix 2 and Appendix 1. So if you could bear with me for that. Our surface dressing operations were kind of late in starting. We didn't start until July, but we concluded that a week or so ago, and we've basically done about twice what we would normally do. The appendices, Appendix 1 outlines the works that have been done. You'll note that there's a number of schemes which have been added into the works. I've explained why that's the case in the paragraph 6. Effectively, due to a operational issue with our spray tankers and a licensing issue, we were effectively unable to use it as a tanker as such, and had to use it as an item of plant. So a decision was taken to effectively increase the size of the sites we were working on and try and stay in individual locations as long as we could, whilst treating sections of road which have appeared in the National Condition Survey as requiring to be treated. Effectively, as I say, we've done about twice what we would ordinarily have done, which is reflected in our budget allocation. We've subsequently started on our surfacing. We started last week, and the first scheme that was done there was Vatton. We've also undertaken another additional scheme in Upper Fiorlig, which was only 2 kilometres away, but yet crying out for work to be undertaken. The appendices outline where we are to date, and obviously we will keep progressing with the works as long as the weather allows us to do so. One of the things that's not noted in the report is the additional 9 million, which was agreed at committee earlier in the year in Inverness, and I think it was in June, the Health and Prosperity strategy. That's granting us, or the council, another £9 million, for which we'll receive a share, and will allow us to undertake further improvement works within the area. I think that will be reported to committee in Inverness, how that split is being made, and we'll await our allocation. Obviously, any additional resources that we receive are very welcome. I don't think there's anything else that I'd want to add at the moment, if members have any questions.
Thanks, Gordon. Councillor Finlayson.
Yeah, thanks, Gordon, for the report. And I think we all welcome the increase in funding. And very clearly, I mean, there's always pockets where work needs done, but certainly I think that the general feedback I'm getting is that everyone's delighted to see the roads team out doing as much as they can, and I think we shouldn't underestimate how much work they are doing, and we thank you and the team for that. I suppose in light of that additional funding, which is always welcome, Gordon, where are you in terms of manpower? You know, we know that everybody tells us that 15, 20 years ago we had 60 men in the road squad. We've now got 13 or whatever. So it's really just, I mean, how are things in terms of manpower? Because we can have as much resource as we like, but if we don't have the manpower to deliver it. The other thing is just checking up on the surface dressing. I think it's eminently sensible that you carry out surface dressing when you've got the machinery in the area. For those areas where there's been a bit of slippage, can you confirm that road repair will still be done? You know, the preparatory work will still be done even if the surface dressing is happening a wee bit later. And just a couple of very localized points, the laybys in Waterstein and some of the other works, just checking that, you know, they will happen if manpower allows. And you know that there's also a bit of concern around with the Ayr Road. So it's really, are we still able to do remedial and repair work as well as the extensive planned programme we've got. Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you, Councillor Finlayson. Yeah, you're quite correct. There has been a dramatic reduction in manpower over a significant number of years, and effectively we in Skye and Raasay are down to 16 operatives, of which we have 2 vacant posts and have done for a little while. All of our operatives are HGV drivers, and you'll be aware from the national press and such like of issues in retaining and recruiting HGV drivers. It is difficult for us, and hopefully we'll have to be incredibly lucky, I think, to manage to fill these posts. We've tried on 2 separate occasions and not had any joy, but we live in hope. In terms of I think where we were. In terms of the slippage that occurred on the programme, all of the schemes that were identified as to be surface dressed this year, yes, will receive preparatory works to remove any potholes or such like from them. The laybys in Waterstein, they are included in the programme. They have been in the programme for some time, but we will endeavour, using all the resources available to us, to try and get that undertaken. It is most likely that it will be contractors that are assisting with the car parks that may undertake the earthworks, with the DLO coming along at a later date to surface them. So they are in the programme, and we will endeavour to get them done. Other areas that have been cropping up, as I mentioned previously, members would have been aware of the condition of Upper Fiorlig. We've already addressed that one. There are others which we will and intend to address, and we'll report those to you at War Business meetings. I've referred to the additional 9 million health and prosperity strategy. That'll give you an opportunity for you to determine where you would effectively like some of that to be spent. There is an outstanding list of roads which are in desperate need of attention, and clearly it'll come from that list. Another one that I'm not sure if you mentioned or not, but it is our intention to visit Razzie. Razzie has been in the programme for some while, and unfortunately we have been unable to visit in recent years. However, we will be going out of our way to make sure that works are undertaken on Razzie. I don't think there was anything else outstanding.
Thanks, Gordon. Councillor MacLeod.
Hi, Gordon, and thanks for the very comprehensive report. It's just really a note to show appreciation and acknowledgement with the ongoing progress that you and your team have made with the resources you have. So thanks very much, Gordon.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks, Callum.
MacLeod.
Councillor Munro.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, Gordon. Thanks for the report. You know, Gordon, that what really exercises our constituents is roads, and these are the messages we are getting, and we obviously share these emails with you, so you're aware of what's coming to us. But it's really good to see many of the places which people are wanting to see repaired in the programme here, talking about Clachan, Raasay, Storlochs, and I'm glad that the extra money which we've got for capital improvements is letting us do that. The other thing, Gordon, I think is just to commend you and your team for, if only it was just as simple as getting your plant out of that yard and starting to work on roads. The difficulties you've had with plant and how you've just been flexible and adapted to that, I really want to commend you. And you've made the best use of the time you've had in terms of weather and manpower. So just well done, and look forward to seeing more of the programme rolling out in the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Munro.
Any other questions or comments? No. No, well, I would like to add my thanks to you, Gordon. I think when we look at this report and the work that has been done over the last few months, it is a good news story. And this additional funding that we have received from the council is making a huge difference, and it is being noticed by our communities as well. So, and also the works at the hotspots. We're seeing 7.2 and 7.3 just about the Kerrang and the Kilt Rock, that works continuing just to address some of the tourist issues. So we welcome this report, and progress is being made, and it is being noted by ourselves and our community. So thank you to you and to everybody at Community Services for the work you do. So the recommendations are in 2.1. Members are asked to note the progress of the 21-22 area roads maintenance capital programme, and to approve the amendments and additions to the 21-22 surface dressing and surfacing report, and also to note the progress of the strategic schemes allocated to Skye and Raasay. So noted.
Indeed.
Noted. Approved.
Yeah. Thank you, Gordon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're on to item 7, which is a Skye and Raasay future. And I think Malcolm, Scott, and Stuart McPherson from HIE are going to present. I think Stuart must be the only one in HIE that's not on holiday today. So welcome to Stuart. So I'll hand over to Malcolm, and then I think he's going to hand over to Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I'm just going to give a very short introduction. I'm sure if we cast our minds back to long before the pandemic struck, this was one of the absolutely key pieces of work we wanted to put together for Skye and Raasay, and it's really important within the council's overall approach to localism and place planning that each area brings forward this kind of approach that deals with. It's easy to look at the big strategic developments across the Highlands, but actually what makes most difference in local areas are a joined up approach to making sure public sector and private sector investment is directed to where it's most needed within individual communities. So this is a first step on that journey, what you're going to hear about today. I'd just like to thank both Scott in terms of driving this forward, in a virtual space rather than being able to get out there and engage face to face, but also the efforts that our partners have made, both community and public sector partners, to get to this point. And it's a really, really strong place to build from, particularly when we look at all of the available funding that might be coming forward over the next few years. So without further ado, I think, Stuart, you're going to start us off. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malcolm, and good morning, members. Just for the record, no formal holiday in HIE today. Perhaps Peter's colleagues in the Science Skills Academy have taken leave, but no formal holiday. So we've collaborated very well together to get to this stage. The council, HIE, the community groups, especially project leads, and Architecture and Design Scotland. Indeed, the quality and independence of Architecture and Design Scotland leading the consultation sessions has served us very well, and indeed the process has significantly shaped the work that's in front of you today, as it should. We look forward to continuing the collaborative efforts. In some respects, this is just the first big step, and we look forward to what lies ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, members, and thank you, Malcolm and Stuart, for the introduction to the approach that's been taken and the role and remit that this work is intended to have. Members, my role today is really just to introduce you to the story map that is intending to act as the public interface for the Skye and Raasay future document, and then to talk a little bit about delivery, but not take too much of your time. Before I go into detail about the story map, I should just caveat that, excuse me, The report that's before you is it's intended to be to represent that collective input that we've had in the process so far over the last many months. And as you can appreciate, information comes out, doesn't simply come out at one stage. It's an evolving story, and that's the process that we're putting before you today for approval and adoption. And some of the information that's come out over the last few days has led to a supplementary paper that's been made available through the agenda today. So for anyone listening to the meeting today, as well as yourselves, there is that supplementary agenda item that gives the full updates that we received over the last few days for the document. And so, thinking about the document, I call it a document out of habit, but really thinking about Skye and Raasay Future as a process and as a tool for us, it's intended at the very least for us to have that portfolio for all of us as partners to work together for the people and for the place, and for us to support any cases for funding for the future, and really to act as a publicity tool as well for the area. So it's all of that that's led us to presenting the Skye and Raasay Future framework, if you like, in this story map forum that's before you today. So we've tailored the presentation of Skye and Raasay Future as a document in this online environment, and the way it's set out is you can simply scroll through the whole document if you wish, or you can use the tabs across the top to click on the area that's of interest. We've also slightly juggled it around just to make it more punchy and easy to get to. So it very simply introduces the document and navigates people to where they might want to learn about and see which bits they want to see next. But you can also quickly go straight into the project map and see some of the projects that have been identified to us through the process that help to take forward the outcomes that people have jointly signed up to. So this is a map where you can go to each of these projects and proposals. You can click, if my mouse would work a little bit quicker, you can click on these projects and you can start to get an appreciation of some of those outcomes that these projects will start to deliver. You can click on the Outcomes tab and see what those 7 key statements are that people have helped to refine over the last few months. And these statements, of course, represent the qualities and the attributes that we're trying to achieve or maybe enhance for the area, and they drive the structure of the rest of the Skye and Raasay Future document. As I say, you can then also look at the full project list if you wish at your leisure, and then if you wish you can use the projects themselves to link through to a bit more information about each and every project. So across the top there you'll see there's a subsection for each of those outcome themes. You can read about some of the exciting projects that are already underway and are being investigated for the future to help to address those key outcomes for the future. So it's very much intended for people to access very easily and for it to fulfill that purpose as a portfolio for us all working together for the future. Thinking about that and in wrapping up the item, members, this final section about organising ourselves really reflects the ambition that's been highlighted through the work that's been undertaken for people to have an ongoing, a collaborative process and an ongoing input to the delivery of Skye and Raasay Future. So it's before you today for adoption as a process, not just a product and a document. It's alive. It's intended to have a live status, if you like, not just be a plan for the future. And part of this, the recommendations that are before you, as part of this organising ourselves section, is to put in place a board, which will have, introduce the approach to governance of the ongoing process of Skye and Raasay Future. Through subject to the adoption by committee today, it's our intention to then go out to a number of the different groups who we've been working with so far across the community to get their buy-in and their adoption to secure the plan status as that cross-sector plan for the future. And it's also intended to have and identify place champions so that the process is supporting what is already happening out there, but not stepping on people's toes, trying to make sure that the framework is there to support these things and help them happen. And then there's also a little bit about funding to make sure that we've got as much information in place there for people who are trying to perhaps look for funding to do things in the future. So members, the documents before you for adoption today, I'm hoping I'm speaking on behalf of the Skye and Raasay community in commending the report to you, and we'll look forward to the ongoing process of working together in its delivery. And I point you to the recommendations at section 2 of the report. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks to the three of you for presenting today and for all the work that you've done to date. It's quite incredible just the amount of work that has been done and the amount of detailed information that is in this document. And it's easy to read and it's easy to find information, and yet there's so much detail in it. So yeah, it's a great report. So I'm sure members will have a few comments or questions. So I'll go over to John Finlayson first.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. And I think it is important to thank yourself and Stuart and all the stakeholders, but also all the communities who have been involved in creating SAF, as we're now going to be called it. And I think it's actually it's a council leading initiative, and I think it's fantastic that Skye and Raasay are the area that has taken forward this approach to developing our future in so many different ways. And I think it shouldn't be dismissed either that this has happened during COVID. So this engagement, this development, and what we've now got, this living document, has all been taking place over the last 2 years. So we shouldn't underestimate the commitment of all staff and of all communities and how everyone's engaged with it. So well done, everyone. For me, and it's always been something that I mentioned, the core message is that this is us all working together. This is not a plan or an interactive thing that's going to be done to anyone. This is really about collaboration. It's about empowerment. It's about working together. And I think communities at the start maybe weren't aware of that, but I think they've bought into it because we've involved them in the discussions, because we've taken on board what they've said. And if we look specifically at section 5, the outcomes for people in place, again, they were important to communities. They were agreed and discussed with communities and individuals and stakeholders. So what we've got there is, I think, are the seven outcomes that I think we all agree are definitely the way forward. So absolutely, I would also like to commend this report and this approach. And again, I'd like to thank everyone for the work that has been done. And as you say, the important thing, Scott, is the next stage, that continued engagement and that continued agreement on where do we go next and how we work together. Because this approach categorically is what's been missing, I think, in Skye and Raasay for a long time. We've now got an approach where we're working together, we've got shared outcomes, we've got an ambition that we all share, and most importantly, we're going to work together to make best use of resources that we can get. And now that's key. So we're not going to get duplication, we're going to hopefully get people working together. That shouldn't mean that we don't have challenge and we don't have difficult conversations. But I think what we've got here today is something that I'm convinced the rest of Highland will want to buy into. But we should take a wee bit of credit for the fact that we've driven this, everyone in Skye and Raasay, and it is something exciting. So thanks everyone for everything they've done.
Thanks, John. Callum Munro.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you all for your presentations this morning. Scott, you've in a sense been fronting this up with Stuart just at your side, so thank you both. And add to that, thanks to Douglas and to Malcolm. It's obvious that Malcolm believes in what we're doing, and I really think that Highland Council as a whole are beginning to realise what you've achieved working with us as elected members, but more importantly with our communities and with the stakeholders in our communities. Malcolm had a word, partnership, key. It's been partnership from the beginning and it will continue to be a partnership. And Scott, you also had a word which Councillor Finlayson didn't actually pick up on, but it's really important, it's process. Today is just one little stop in a process. So the process continues, and I hope it will continue for a long, long time. So this is really exciting. It's really positive. I think seeing everything which is going on in our ward collated in one place is fantastic. It's a real endorsement of our communities. It gives us a snapshot of where we are, which is going to be so useful going forward. We'll look back in 5 years. This is where we were. This is where we are now. And it's also, like you say, this a prospectus. The story map is a selling our area. Stuart talked about Architecture and Design Scotland and their involvement. I'd like to thank them because the appendix with their review of consultations is really, really good reading, and I'd recommend that to anybody in our communities to look back and, in a sense, just to thank everybody who took part in that. A couple of comments. Obviously, with a responsibility for Gaelic, I'm really encouraged to see Gaelic mentioned in terms of strengthening communities. Without communities, we won't have a Gaelic language and culture which is thriving. That's really important. I think Two Gaelic sits really comfortably in terms of in our economy, diverse and green economy, and obviously education and health too. And just so going forward, I think this helps us align with funding which is coming up. I mean, that's obviously what one of the main outcomes we're looking for is to find ways of funding this and to develop Skye and Raasay, so Skye and Raasay's future. So just thank you all, and I agree with the recommendations, and yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Callum. Councillor MacLeod.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, just echoing much of what's been said, really, but especially just recognising this as a really good news council story. You know, it's involved significant, extensive engagement, taking a very holistic approach with community groups and third-party sector groups' involvement. It's been, you know, fantastic in successfully identifying the challenges and opportunities and seeking a collaborative, dynamic approach, importantly, finding solutions. The final report here in front of us represents a positive milestone for Skye and Raasay going forward, and not only meeting the many challenges, but also being prepared in its readiness to exceed expectations for the many visitors, but especially the people that work, live and want to have their home here. I think that's really important. Providing a sustainable, bright future, offering many exciting new projects as well. So again, just to thank everyone. It's been a fantastic exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Callum. Yeah, and I just add my thanks to you. I think when we look back over this council over this last 5-year term, it was one of the priorities at the very start of this council was a project similar to what we are seeing here, and collating all the information and all that's needed to be done across the whole of the two islands. And I think it's really encouraging that we're at this place. And again, I think the thread of everyone's comments this morning are the success of it is the partnership working. About us all being around the table and our communities being empowered to take on a lot of just some of the work that we're talking about today, so that it's just not one group or one lead, as it were, but everybody's buying into it and empowered to buy into it. And as Scott has said, it's a living document, and I'm sure it will be around for some time. But as John said, it's important the next steps just to see where we go with it. But yeah, I think we're all really encouraged by it. And again, I think it's a very easy document to read and to access the information, which I think is really important, and yet it's very detailed. So yeah, a big well done to everybody that's been involved in getting us to the place that we're at. It's like a lot of work that's been done by the council. We might not be where we want to be, but certainly we're not where we once were, and we just have to acknowledge that it is a journey. And so a big well done to everybody involved. The recommendations are before us. Sorry, my laptop's just, not my laptop, my tablet's just gone off. So the recommendations are before us in item 7, to consider the draft Skye and Raasay future SARF, Appendix 1, and agree its adoption by the Skye and Raasay committee. And there's another 4 or 5 points in that recommendation. So is everybody in agreement with what is before us?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Thank you, members. Thanks,
Thank
Stuart,
you.
Malcolm, and Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 8 in our agenda is the community asset transfer involving Razzie Ferry Terminal, and we have that report before us. And Ewan McIntosh is with us this afternoon. It's just turned this afternoon. So good afternoon, Ewan. I'll just hand over to you.
Good afternoon, members, and it's a pleasure to join you, not least after such an encouraging report about community empowerment and what we might look forward to in Skye and Raasay. And in this CAT request, what we have, I would say, is another example of a potential opportunity to support community-led services. In this case, the report before you is a recommendation for approval of a 99-year lease of the Raasay Ferry Terminal to Raasay Development Trust for £1. And to note, members, that is a variation of the request from the Trust, recommended for approval, originally the request being ownership for £35,000 on a valuation of £40,000, and this recommendation being a 99-year lease at £1 per annum. Noting that the request doesn't relate to the wider harbour or slipway, but to the building for the terminal itself. So what we're talking about here are the waiting room, toilets, store and office. So that's about 48 square metres in total and around 12 parking spaces at the pier outside. The background to the request is that it's part of a wider community pontoon development proposal, which the Trust is leading in response to really extensive community engagement, which identified the pontoon as a local priority. That's to improve transport links, opportunities for local businesses, and to respond to demand for tourism. That pontoon would provide 12 berths, 2 bridges to access, and facilities and services for visitors by boat, by camper van, and electric vehicle too. So there's both an onshore and offshore component. Specifically here, though, the transfer of the terminal itself would allow redevelopment of the toilets and the showers, including disabled access. The waiting room would be renewed with a laundrette. Outdoors, there would be electrical hookups and waste disposal. The proposal from the Trust is assessed very positively against the core criteria for CAT. To remind members, community benefit that derives from transfer, community support, the group's capacity to deliver, resource and sustain that benefit that would be delivered from the asset. So what we have here from the Trust is an application which demonstrates very strong community support for the proposals, and that clearly sets out how transfer would benefit the wider community. So it supports those community-led services, improves that local asset, making it more accessible for wider community use, including disabled access. And it would facilitate that wider development of the community pontoon facility, which could increase the numbers of visitors to Raasay. So the recommendation today is to vary the Trust's original request to ownership. And the reason for that is elaborated in the report, but to briefly summarise, in the unlikely event that the Trust itself or a private operator were to experience difficulties that lead to the terminal being closed, ownership transfer would not allow the council to reinstate the toilet room and waiting room facilities for passengers to the ferry, whereas a lease agreement would allow the harbour master to step in to reinstate those services under terms agreed in a lease. A 99-year lease arrangement has been discussed with the Trust as an agreeable alternative for CAT, and in particular this is compatible with key funding requirements. It allows the development to go ahead and that benefit to be realised, while retaining some future protection for the council over what are key facilities for a rural community. So this proposal is one which would enable the community body to pursue its aims and objectives, which are considered to be of strong community benefit. The recommended price of £1 per year reflects the significant benefits that are assessed as likely to arise from the proposal, and offering that long lease, the council can empower significant investment in community development of what would be a modern, accessible terminal facility, while retaining the ability to ensure that those services are always available. And to close, members, we would ask that you agree the variation for approval and invite any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ewan. I'll go over to John Finlayson.
Yeah, thanks, Ewan. I mean, we've been supportive of this all along. We've put Coastal Communities funding into it. Very clear there's been engagement with the Trust. The Trust are happy, the Council are happy, the community assets are protected. For me, it's a no-brainer. So I don't think there's any reason not to agree the variation that you're recommending. But thanks for that.
Thank you, John. Callum MacLeod.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ewan. I think that's an exciting development. I think, this is what we want, empowering local communities. We've seen an increase in visitors to Razzie, and I think, on top of having the marvellous asset with Razzie House, we've also got the fantastic distillery over there, bringing more people in. So I think this will be an additional support to that, and it's great. I commend you for that. Thank you.
Thanks, Callum. Callum Munro.
Afternoon, Ewan. Thank you for that. Ewan, it's a really well constructed and comprehensive report, so thanks for that. It makes our job as members really easy, but we're obviously right behind this. It's a good news, a good opportunity for Raasay. In 3.4 of your report, you've got one of the Council's key strategic priorities, which exactly reflects what we've been talking about in the previous item and in this. So I agree with the recommendation of the report. Thank you, Ewan.
Thank you, Callum. Yeah, I'd just like to add my thanks for the report. And again, as John said, we've been supportive of this project from the beginning, and it's going to make a big impact, not only for Razzie, but I'm sure the wider community too. And it is a good news story, empowering communities and just making them more sustainable in terms of the work that they do. So a big well done with that. So the recommendation is before us in item 8. Members are asked to vary the community asset transfer request for approval as following: a 99-year lease of the Razzie Ferry Terminal to the Razzie Development Trust for £1 per annum, if asked, and on the terms as detailed in the recommendation of the report. So we agree, members, yeah? Agreed. Thank you. Thanks, Ewan.
Thank you, members.
Okay, on to item 9, which is the Portree Link Road, and we're joined by Colin Howell. I'll just hand over to you, Colin, to speak to the paper. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. It's lovely to be in your committee today. As you're all aware, the Portree Link Road has been a long-held aspiration for the area, and it's also contained in the local development plan. It was reassuring to hear earlier in your committee about the Skye and Raasay futures process, and quite clearly Portree Link Road was a key component and might be seen as one of the first actions sort of flowing post that document. So that's good news as well. Just to let you know that developers have come forward with some proposals to look at development associated with Portree Link Road, and that development's predicated on Portree Link Road being finished. Lochalsh and Skye Housing Association are looking to undertake developments, as are others. And so consequently, we've been in discussions about how we might bring that forward to enable the link road to be built in advance of those developments coming forward. And so consequently, as a council, we made an application to the Scottish Government's Infrastructure Loan Fund. Just to let you know, members, an infrastructure loan fund is an interest-free loan from Scottish Government, and it's needed, or its purpose is to facilitate infrastructure to enable development to come forward. But we do need a mechanism to pay that loan back. So what we've got is developer contributions. The local development plan identifies the need for developer contributions. So those developers will be helping to fund, as they come forward with development, to prepay that loan. But there was a little bit of a shortfall. So we were expecting a construction cost of £1.6 million. We were expecting £1.4 million worth of developer contributions. So we sought some capital allocation from the E&I committee in May and got an allocation of 200,000. So that means that we've now got a mechanism to take forward Portree Link Road, and also a mechanism to fully fund and repay back that developer infrastructure loan. So where we are at the moment, we are currently in discussions with those developers, because we anticipate, or they will require, access onto Portree Link Road, and we're in discussion with them about how we design that access, and we're anticipating another roundabout. So consequently, if you look at the paper, you will see a layout of Portree Link Road. We're in discussion to include a further roundabout, and the idea is that rather than us building a link and then developers coming forward and reconstructing and building against what we've done, we're trying to do a phased development. So we're actually doing the Portree Link Road and that roundabout junction at the same time, so that the development can come forward and just link merely into it. So we're in discussions with the developers, because the developers are also providing the majority of the land we need to provide the Portree Link Road. So those discussions are well developed. So we expect to submit the planning application subject to your approval today in the very near future, that will enable us to undertake the construction of the final section of Portree Link Road next year for completion by the end of next year. Happy to take any questions, members.
Thank you, Colin. John Finlayson.
Colin, so at last, it's no longer the road to nowhere, or it's no longer the partial road to nowhere. I mean, I think that's going to be exciting news for everyone. And I think it says in the background, the creation of a link road forms an integral part of the long-term and strategic expansion of Portree at Home Farm. I don't think it's just Portree. I think this is something that's going to benefit the whole of Skye, and it's something that we've sought for a long time. And it's also really encouraging, Colin, to hear the timescales that you're talking about. And I think having these kind of timescales, ambitious timescales, but hopefully realistic timescales, also means that the other developments we've got planned, like a public sector key location, conversations about them can now also, move at a faster pace. And the fact that we've got such a good developer contributions obviously makes the project so viable. So this is a really good news story. And again, Colin, thank you for your hard work. And as I say, I look forward to both driving and cycling on the Portree Link Road before too long. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Callum Munro.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Colin. Not much to add to Councillor Finlayson's remarks. The timescale is encouraging. It's great to get to this point, and I've used this word before, but this will be truly transformational for Skye, the whole of Skye, and so it's really important development. So really encouraged to see the timescale, and looking forward to hearing updates on the land and the negotiations with developers. So thank you, Colin.
Thanks, Callum. Callum MacLeod.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Colin. Yeah, it's certainly been one of the projects that I've constantly been jarred about since becoming a councillor. What about this link road? When's that taking place? So it's a vital component in the future development plan, and I think I can just echo all the sentiments that have been said, but I do appreciate the enormity of the work that's been on in the years running up to this. So I'd just like to acknowledge that, and thanks, Colin.
Thank you, members.
Thanks, Callum. Yeah, I'd just like to add my thanks too. I mean, the link road has been a priority for some time, not only for the council, but the local communities as well. So it's really encouraging just to see where we are finally with it. It's going to make a huge difference to the town and the flow of traffic heading north. And again, it will open up that area for housing and future development as well. So there's so many things that this will make an impact on. So thanks, Colin, for all your work with us, and the officers of the council. And we just look forward to finally seeing this completed next year. So thanks for this report. And members are asked in agenda item 9 to note the funding position in respect of the Portree Link Road, and to agree the submission of the planning application for the scheme, and to note the proposed delivery timetable. So members are in agreement.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Colin.
Thank you, members.
Okay, we're on to item 10, which is the visitor management plan, and we're joined by Colin Simpson. Good afternoon, Colin.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, members.
You've got a very nice screen behind you. I take it you're not sitting up in the Kerrang, are you?
Yes. Honestly, I don't just change it for every committee. That one's there all the time. Members, what I was wanting to do today was really just to run through a couple of the things which are in the appendix to the report that you've got, just to pull out one or two kind of Skye specific things. I didn't propose to go through absolutely everything that's in there, but that appendix is part of a document that a number of council services contribute to, so that we keep in a sense, a running total of all the different things that have been done in relation to the visitor management plan, which members will be aware, was launched this spring and has been designed to try and help mitigate some of the issues that we saw in 2020. So without going into the details on all of them, I wanted just to pull out a couple of key things, and then maybe to finish off with, just touch on a little bit more about the Ranger service, because I think that's probably been one of the key ones. But just before I get onto that part, a lot of the work that's been involved has been around roads and car parking, and there have been some elements on Skye. There's been some works in Kyleakin Car Park, for example, some passing place sign replacement on many of the single track roads there, because I understand that's been something in various parts of the Highlands that's maybe made things that bit more difficult for visitors and other drivers less familiar with the roads. But interestingly, one of the things that will come on to looking at the Rangers is there appear to have been slightly fewer parking related issues on Skye than in some other parts of Highland. And I think much of that is maybe down to some of the efforts that we've seen in the last couple of years to improve parking at some of the key sites like Ferry Pools, Store, Quirang, etc. So I suppose the point of mentioning that is, whilst this is looking at a visitor management plan that's specifically in place for this year, all the work that's been done in a wider sense is also contributing to visitors being able to enjoy the island that bit better than before. One of the other issues which had cropped up last year was the rate that many of the bins were filling up at. I think some of that was driven by people wild camping, people in motorhomes who would typically have disposed of their waste on a campsite, were using some of the public bins for that. So we rolled out some additional collections where that was practical, if the bin lorries were in the area frequently enough. And where that wasn't possible, there were other approaches taken, for example, swapping over bins during the week so that some things could be taken away, a new bin could be put out to cope with the amount that was required, or putting a bigger bin in place if that was more practical. And of course, that needs people to do it. So as well as rolling out these additional services, the waste team did recruit some additional staff for the season, including one Portree-based member of staff to cover Skye. And as I understand it, that's been fairly effective this year in terms of reducing some of the incidents of overflowing bins or litter. I don't doubt there will still be one or two instances where things have not been perfect, but overall I think it's been quite an improvement. I touched on motorhomes there, and one of the other things we tried to do this year was just to ensure that there were slightly better facilities and better advice available for those visiting in motorhomes. And two things were maybe worth flagging up, which are in the report here. One of them was that we offered a small-scale grant to commercial campsites to try and encourage more of them to make their waste disposal facilities available to motorhomes that maybe weren't staying with them, particularly if some of the sites were full, which we know does happen at peak times. We had 19 sites across Highland have decided to take part in that. 3 of them are on Skye, and another 2, in a sense, adjacent to Skye on the approaches to and from the island. So across the whole of Highland and in that local area, I think there's now much better provision so that people are always within a short drive of somewhere that they can dispose of their waste. And of course, in addition to those sites, there's also the standalone facilities that have been provided at places like Store and Portree. So all of that's helping to provide a wider network across the island and across the wider Highlands. Another thing I think is probably of relevance is we produced a guidance note specifically for motorhome visitors, how to enjoy the Highlands in your motorhome essentially. And this was trying to take a kind of education and advice type approach rather than an enforcement type approach to encouraging better practice. They've been quite well used by the Rangers, who hand them out to people they're speaking to. They'll leave them on the windscreens of some of the motorhomes that are maybe parked up for the night off site, etc. And not only does that do things like point people to where these waste facilities are available, it also gives them bits of useful guidance around things like driving, including on single track roads, using passing places, where it's appropriate to park up, these type of things. Most of it's not necessarily new information, but it's things that were put out in various different ways in the past, have all been pulled together into the one flyer. And the early indications from the Rangers is that that's been quite well received as well. So that's something I think we would look to try and continue. So just to finish off with, as I mentioned before, the Ranger service and the inclusion of a number of dedicated access rangers for this summer was a key part of the visitor management plan. We've had a team of 17 rangers across Highlands, a number of them including all or some of their time on Skye. And that, I think, has been one of the bigger successes this season. It's been welcomed by many of the visitors that have come here. I think it's been welcomed by many of the communities. And whilst, again, I think there have still been issues have cropped up in certain places, I guess there's also a question that we could ask ourselves, what might it have been like if those rangers hadn't been there helping give guidance and advice and doing some of the tidying up type work, etc., that they've done. I just wanted to pull out a couple of figures that I've been provided with from Philip Waite that manages that team, just to give a wee bit of context to things. And obviously things are still going on for another few weeks yet until we reach the autumn. So the number of patrols to date, and this is roughly a week-old figure now, the Rangers had done 782 patrols across Highland, with 149 of them being on Skye, so 19% of the Highland total. There are various figures that the Rangers are collecting, which will be really useful to us in terms of a debrief at the end of the year. And I don't propose to pull out absolutely every one, but just to give a wee bit of a kind of context to the scale of this operation, the number of tents that they've observed across the Highlands, and this is obviously off sites, is 5,500. A bit over 600 of them are on Skye, which is somewhere around the 12% mark. So they're dealing with quite large numbers of certain things. They've identified over 2,200 fire sites. So again, something that we've really been trying to not exactly clamp down on, but encourage good behaviour with. And a number of them, 71 of them across Highland, were ones that the Rangers felt were a potential danger, so could have led to a wildfire starting, for example, if something hadn't been done about it. And I know members will be aware there have been a few wildfire instances on Skye in recent years. One of the bits of feedback we had at another meeting from Scottish Fire and Rescue Services, despite having probably better and drier weather this summer, the number of wildfires has actually been down a little bit. So I'd like to think that some of this guidance and advice people are getting is starting to hit home, and it's encouraging better behaviour from people. So that's hopefully another good news story. And then there's been other figures. I won't go through all of them in detail, but things like the number of instances of inappropriate waste disposal, toileting on site, litter, etc. collected, which the Rangers are all gathering, and that gives us a much better picture at the end of the year. We know there were problems last year, but last year nobody was out there actually quantifying them, so it was very much anecdotal evidence. This year we've got much more robust evidence that will help for any planning for future years. So that, members, was all I was proposing to go through, just to pull out a few things from the report, but of course happy to take any questions member might have.
Thank you, Colin. Thanks for your presentation and your report and all the work that you and your team do. I think the visitor management plan has made a huge difference to our communities this year. I think we're in a very different place than we were coming out of that first lockdown, when we had so many different issues. And again, maybe we're not where we want to be, but we're certainly not where we once were. And I think, again, having the Rangers in various places is making a huge difference. I think having a person or people or a presence is key going forward. In many areas of Highland life, it's fine to have leaflets or a good sort of advertising campaign, but it's nothing compared with having somebody on site, as it were, just to be that person that deals with all these different issues. So I think it's vital that we continue that kind of service going forward. So thanks for all your work. Over to John Finlayson for. Yeah,
well said, Councillor Gordon. I think it's visitor management and support. I think that's what we've seen this year. And I think it's an example of the council being responsive to the concerns that were raised 2 years ago when we were inundated with tourist issues and communities very unhappy. We mustn't forget that we are a tourist destination, so we need to be supporting our tourists and also our local residents. So thanks again, Colin, for that. So I think the key message is visitor management plan. It can't be a one-off. It can't be a response for this year. It needs to be something that is built in to the work of the council, and we need to make sure that members like us are lobbying for this to carry on and be sustainable. I think what also has been important, I think has worked really well, has been the fact that there's been the responsive nature of things has been led at local level. I think that's really key. And while this report is quite a generic report, Colin, about the whole of Highland, I think the work that's been done in our area has been done by local officers. So I think we need to make sure that we've got that resource and we've got that empowerment. Something that's I'm keen to see is an extension of the comfort scheme, the toilet comfort scheme. I think that's something that we need to be looking at here in Skye. I think we need to be looking at the rates that we offer the comfort schemes. Just on a personal note, I keep being told by officers and reports that an additional comfort scheme has been put into Killakin. That's not the case. There was always a comfort scheme in Killakin. It's just a new premises that's offering it. So that cannot disappear. That is a permanent scheme. It's just a new provider. And in terms of passing place signs, that's big. That's really important here. And I think while we're seeing mention of certain sites, Glen Nevis, etc., Glencoe, we need to make sure that that's a priority here in Skye, given the huge number of single track roads we've got that lead to hotspots. And I've said before, I was in Mull recently, and there wasn't a single passing place sign missed. And the roads worked really well because you could see the signs and you could see the cars coming. So I think that's something that we really need to focus on. So once again, thank you for that. But my big message is visitor management plan, great. It's worked well. It is working well. We can develop it further, but we need that opportunity. So it needs to stay this year, next year, and for the foreseeable future. So thanks for that, Colin.
Thank you, John. Callum MacLeod.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks very much, Colin. As you've said, it's an ongoing dialogue, but as the Chair was saying, we've come on a long way. I think that the conversations that have been taking place are a lot less rancorous now about the behavioural aspects that we've seen in tourists recently, particularly with the challenges that COVID brought. But I often reflected that when we lost the Ranger service some years ago, that we were missing a trick. Especially with the ascension of tourism, the popularity that Skye, the destination that it's become, worldwide destination. I think it was such a valuable asset and is. It was great to see it being reintroduced, and I think that's really helped enormously. So I want to just say that, and again, just look forward to seeing what we can do to support you in the future. Thank you, Colin.
Thanks, Callum. Callum Munro.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Colin, for the verbal report. Really useful, and it's obvious how the effect the visitor management plan has had this year. As Councillor Finlayson said, we are a major tourist destination. To be such a destination without a visitor management plan is unthinkable. We didn't have it last year, and we paid the price, and our communities paid the price, and I'm sure many visitors had a poor experience. Look at the difference this year, and just shows the importance going forward of putting something in place. You talked too about management and the facilities which have been developed in terms of car parks, Store, Ferry Glen, and now we're looking ahead to Clachan and Coral Beach Car Park, and that's, again, it's Highland Council being responsive. The community there have been made very clear the troubles they have, access to the present car park. What we're doing is being responsive and trying to create a really good facility which helps locals and helps tourists have a good experience. So really important. I think just it would be good towards the end of the season to have a really specific Skye and Raasay report of this type, looking at all the headings in the report here, but really specifics, and you've got obviously got statistics which you can use. So that would be good. Colin, I think most of the officers today have got off lightly. We haven't really given them any questions, but one question I would be in terms of looking back at this year, was there one or two particular things we didn't get right, or we didn't expect, or we weren't prepared for, and which we've really taken on board? Just anything that came out of left field which we didn't expect and which we could respond to in future. So thank you, Colin. Thank you to everybody who works in your team. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. Maybe just a couple of kind of observations to begin with, and I'll pick up on Councillor Munro's query there as well. I was quite taken at a meeting recently about a term they used in the Cairngorms, which was it's managing for visitors. We're not actually managing the visitors, we're managing the area for the visitors' benefit. And I think that really comes across in many of the comments that members have made. And I think it's important that we kind of recognise that part. And in doing so, I think we do, as members have suggested, have to look forward to the future, not just say, right, that's it, job done for this year. And it's probably worth mentioning two things to members in relation to that. One of them is that there are a number of kind of debrief type things planned for later in the year. So all the rangers from all across Highland will be getting together in October so they can exchange information about the issues that they came up against and what their responses were, that type of thing. And similarly, we'll be reporting back to the Council's Tourism Committee at the end of September on much of what's happened with the visitor management plan. So there are plans in place to take on board all the things that we've learned in a kind of more formal way. In terms of what we did or didn't get right, I guess some of that will come out of that debrief type thing. From my own perspective, I think what probably surprised me the most is that compared with 2020, when things opened up really quite quickly and opened up when we were already into the summer school holiday period, we still actually saw quite a lot of people being able to go overseas in 2020, and we didn't really see that the same this year. So I think there were a lot of people this year were almost hedging their bets. You know, we heard a lot of reports, and Visit Scotland were certainly reporting that people were booking 2 holidays, one overseas, one at home, and taking whichever one they could. And I think we probably saw more people coming to Highland this year than we perhaps expected because so few went overseas. And that had a knock-on effect, I think, with the numbers wild camping, the numbers in motorhomes. And when I say wild camping, I'm meaning in a tent sense. And I think perhaps some of those numbers were a bit greater than we maybe thought they were. I think also, and this is very anecdotal, but I think certain places have seen a lot, and the west coast of Highland in particular has. But I was speaking to a Visit Scotland colleague last week who said they were in Argyll themselves, and it was actually surprisingly quiet until basically you hit the Ballyhoolish Bridge and then all the way home. It was busy. So certain places have certainly caught people's imaginations, and maybe the spread of visitors across different areas hasn't necessarily been what we expected, and this pressure at honeypots has been something that's been that wee bit more difficult to cope with. But that's my own observations. There's not very much in the way of hard and fast figures behind any of these things quite yet.
Okay, Colin, thanks for that. So in agenda item 10, members are asked to note the information provided by each service on the progress to date on the delivery of the visitor management plan's actions as detailed in Appendix 1. So everybody agreed that we've noted them? Yep. Thanks, Colin, again for all your work.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Okay, we're on to item 11, which is the Highland Coastal Communities Fund. and we have an application on behalf of the Glendale Community Hall, and I think we're joined by Wendy Anderson.
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi, Wendy. Do you want to speak to this paper, and then if we've got any questions or comments, we'll come back to you.
Yep, certainly. This report is to ask members to consider the approval of Highland Coastal Communities grant funding to Glendale Community Hall to allow the hall toilets to be open to the public throughout the season. This will include installation of additional infrastructure in the community hall and upgrading the fixtures and fittings in the toilets from a domestic type to those of a more robust design, which will cope with the increased usage. They are looking for £25,014.56, and the total project cost is £27,014.56.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Councillor Finlayson.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm taking a personal interest in this one because when the Glendale Community Council went in existence, this was a topic of conversation the whole time. Toilets, as visitors headed to Nice Point, toilets in Glendale. You know, we have now come up with a solution, and I'd like to thank the Glendale Hall for the offer that they've made. But I think in particular Maggie McPhee, who's been proactive in discussing this with myself and officers. So we've now got a solution that's going to support some of the concerns over in Nice Point and in Glendale. So I think this is an example of a project that is really worth supporting. But I think the wider context is that this is another project that we can support because we have got access to coastal communities funding, and that whole issue around about disaggregated budgets coming to local area means that we can be responsive. And this is an example of something that there was a real issue. The community looked to find a solution. They approached us, and we were able to support them. So, and given your scoring, Wendy, I don't see why we wouldn't support it. So this should again be another good news story. So thanks, Wendy, for providing this paper. But more importantly, thanks to the Glendale community for coming up with a solution that we are able to support.
Thanks, John. Callum Munro.
Thank you, Chair. To be honest, this area committee has been full of really positive stories and good news stories for our ward. Again, we've got Highland Coastal Communities funding, which we can use to make a real difference to Glendale community. For visitors to Nice Point in particular. So I think this has turned out to a really good news story. So I approve the recommendations. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Callum. Callum Munro.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Wendy, bringing this to the committee today. You know, for years we've been hearing about all the challenges that part of Skye particularly has arose with you know, around toilets, and I think this will be very welcome for indeed, you know, for part of what we'll be speaking about today. It's just one of the good news stories that we're more than happy to hear about. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, just add my thanks as well, just for your work, Wendy. And again, as John said, that the community and the whole have come up with solutions in their area. And again, it's another example of the council and the communities working together to find solutions for their area. So yeah, the recommendation is for us to approve the funding that has been applied for, and I think it's a unanimous yes to the funding being approved today. So thanks for that, Wendy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
Bye.
Bye. So we're on to item 12, which is parking income, and the report is before us, and I think Malcolm and Shane are going to speak to this paper.
Yeah, thanks, afternoon members. So what you've got, just first of all, apologies for the late submission of this report to you, but there was a bit of work going on in the background to make sure the figures were as up to date as possible, etc. So what you've got in front of you, I think, is general overview of where we are with the various projects that have been rolled out over the course of the last few months and years, and brings a an overview, particularly on the income side, and I'll come back to cost side in a moment. But what it does do is demonstrate very clearly the success of the new facilities that have been put in place for visitor management. That's probably been reflected in a few of the items we've talked about already at this committee. Some of the new car parks, they're still subject to final outturn costs. So just in terms of finishing everything off and the fact that we've got to keep some retention as part of the contractual arrangements for putting them in place. But generally speaking, you're seeing really positive outcome for the 4 months that are reported here for this year. Last year clearly was impacted to a certain degree by COVID, but on an overall positive position this year in Skye. So obviously we will be keeping monitoring through to the end of the year. The final figures on the income side will obviously be reported at that point. I think it's important also to talk through the costs of the car parking. So what we will need to do is have the income figures that are set out in this report. And that needs to be adjusted to reflect a number of things. So the costs for each of our car parks will be dependent on subtracting, if you like, the annualized maintenance costs, which is fixed per bay for each car park. The relevant costs for capital borrowing, and I'll come back to that. Lease payments where appropriate, if we're leasing land, and an agreed partner split. And as members will be aware, at Bayfield, Ferry, Glen and Carran, there is partnership arrangements with Scripid and with Raasay Community Trust. And once we reach the end of the year, that split, we know the income will be put through and split up. So we'll be dealing then with the net income that comes. So I think money in terms of income is already coming into the community through the arrangements of Portree and Raasay Community Trust and Scripid. So I think the bigger question around the net figure, if you like, in terms of income, you'll know that the council policy agreed at the ED&I committee in 2019. It was agreed that surplus would be split between the service and the local area committee. That surplus split arrangement was tied into, the bigger picture on car park rollout. Clearly, a lot of that has been impacted by COVID. So, but nonetheless, what we're intending to do is bring our report back to the next Economy and Infrastructure Committee in December, setting out the mechanism for that will be employed, seeking member agreement. And obviously that will take into account the impact, not just that last year has had on the overall picture as regards income, but also reflect the real success, hopefully, that you members in Skye and Raasay have demonstrated by supporting the projects that you have supported and getting the council agreement for the capital borrowing, etc. So I hope you'll see from the report we're monitoring things closely, and that in a future report we will be able to bring much more detail as to specific capital borrowing costs as they refer to each individual car park. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. John Finlayson, have you got questions or comments?
Yeah, thank you very much for the report, Malcolm and Shane. And I think, as you pointed out at the beginning, Malcolm, the new car parks have also supported visitor management, and that's been a common theme throughout today. Is that a lot of the infrastructure works and the works that have been carried out are supporting both visitors and community. So I think that's really important. Obviously, there's a community expectation, given the discussions that have happened previously round about the 50-50 split of any surplus between the service and the local area. So I'm delighted to see that there is a paper coming to EDI or E&I now in December, because I think there is a little bit of confusion and understanding of what that is going to look like. So it's really going to be important for us as local members and probably for members across Highland to understand what that split's going to look like. I think it's also really important for everyone to understand that there has been huge investment, and there are costs, and there are lease payments, and there are partner splits. And I think, as Malcolm has said, that in terms of partner splits, it's local community groups that are getting some of that income. So it's really just asking that one question. So after the December committee, Malcolm, do you think there'll be clarity for everyone about what that split looks like, and we'll be able then eventually to get some of the net income that we believe we're entitled to here in Skye?
So thanks, Councillor Finlayson, and the clarity will be provided through that report in December. So it's December the 1st. And bear in mind that last year, I'm sure you'll accept, or hopefully members will accept, last year was a bit of a write-off with COVID, and the store, new facilities come on, perhaps later than some of the others, as well as Ferry Glen. So last year effectively was, we're not talking about any significant profit as such, but in terms of how we move forward, the agreement as currently set out is that local split will apply, so that doesn't change. We just need to make sure that, given the issues that have been with the overall rollout of car parking elsewhere, that the policy properly reflects that, and there will be clarity at that point. I can give you that assurance.
Thank you, Malcolm. Councillor Munro.
Thanks, Chair. Shane, thanks for the report, and Malcolm, thanks for speaking to it. I think a picture is starting to emerge, and obviously we can't have a complete picture until year-end income, gross income is toted up, and also expenses are brought and are clarified. So looking forward to December and to that clarity. And obviously my fellow members have a handle on the expectations of our community, and so it's important that it's clear to our community what how the mechanism works. And so it's a picture. We can't obviously complete the picture until year end, I suppose, and until committee has met. But this is useful, so thank you both.
Thanks, Callum. Councillor MacLeod.
Thanks, Malcolm, and thank you, obviously, Shane. I think it's important that we see the infrastructure improvement that we've had. The gains are important to acknowledge, and especially I think with visitor management, this feeds into to see how the residents understand our monetary and equitable share in the grand scheme of what revenue brings, and like being acknowledged, I look forward to further clarification on that. Thanks.
Thanks, Callum. Well, the recommendation in 2.1 is members are asked to note the report, and as Malcolm said, we will get a future report at an area committee just with the detail that we still expect. So thanks to Shane and to Malcolm for presenting today.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Okay, item 13, the last item on the agenda today, is the place-based investment funds. And our ward manager, Willie, I think is going to speak to this paper.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. As you're aware, a £100,000 place-based investment fund has been allocated to each ward for the 21-22 financial year. The purpose of this fund is to help address the 4 harms of COVID, as detailed in the paper. Early discussions at ward level have identified a range of opportunities for spend against this fund. Today, the committee has been asked to consider and agree an allocation of £14,000 towards additional seasonal staff hours for amenity services. The aim of this is to provide additional capacity to enable general maintenance around cemeteries, play areas and toilets on Skye and Raasay. This has been identified as a core priority for communities. Board members are also working with community representatives and officers on the development of projects to be considered for future support from the remaining fund. A report on future spending allocations will be brought forward to the next Skye and Raasay Area Committee on the 29th of November. It's also worth noting that although the funding has to be committed in this financial year, the spend can be taken forward beyond the end of the financial year. I'm happy to take any questions or comments that members might have.
Thanks, Willie. John Finlayson?
Okay, thank you, Willie. I think this is again, I mean, today's committee sounds like one big love-in because it's been a very, very positive committee, but and I think, and I'm sure that the press in attendance today will want to reflect that positivity and all the good news stories that we've got in terms of the work that's been done, the investment that's been made, the infrastructure that's been developed. And this again is another example of us responding to what the community are asking us. So they're asking us questions about additional maintenance at cemeteries. They're asking us about additional works that the amenities guys can do. We know we've got a high number of seasonal workers, so we're trying to give that resource, trying to extend that resource. So again, this is a positive news story. So I think Kevin Gordon, the manager, has got lots of jobs planned for the workforce, and we can also feed into that. And of course, we're feeding in what communities are telling us. So thanks for the report, Willie. And again, I think it reflects the fact that we are being proactive, we are being responsive, and we are making use of the disaggregated budgets that we've got. And of course, you know my call is give us more disaggregated budgets. But I know you can't do that, Willie.
Thanks, John. Callum Munro?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Willie. Councillor Finlayson's comment about a positive committee. Well, to be honest, you can't have positive committees without hard work, and the hard work of our officers has got us to where we are. So it's been a really good committee, lots of papers, and I think this is, as John Finlayson says, been responsive to communities. This will be a positive, getting this work done with the extra budget to the seasonal staff. So I'm in agreement, Willie, and no questions, so thank you.
Thanks, Callum. Callum MacLeod?
Thanks, Willie. Again, this is more welcome news for communities, and it's great to hear as well that if monies aren't identified straight away, that they can be taken forward. So I think that's excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Callum. Yeah, I would agree with everyone's comments. I mean, this is a fund, again, it says in our paper, about a flexible local response to some of the issues that maybe we've seen over COVID. And members are asked in 2.1 to consider and agree the proposed allocation of place-based investment funds as follows: investment in additional seasonal staff for amenity services at 14,000. And to note that the projects related to the following themes are under development, and we will consider them at a future meeting: commercial business opportunities, Skye and Raasay future, roads, social isolation and loneliness. So I'm sure we will see a future paper on just where the extra monies will be allocated in the future. Callum, do you want to come? Or is that
Thanks, Chair. No, thanks, Chair. Just another comment. I mean, this is extra hours, taking seasonal staff well into September and October. And a lot of the trouble we had last year was with COVID and staff not being able to start on work in cemeteries and parks and play areas. I just wanted to make a suggestion to Willie and to my fellow members that that couple of extra months would be quite good if we had a focus on getting our communities into action for next year. And let's see if we can equip communities with just some time with Kevin and the staff, just to, because I think we've obviously got community members who are active in our communities that we can maybe focus at for a year ahead. That will be a good use of that time as well. So that's just a little suggestion. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, Colin. Thank you. So members are asked to note the recommendations, and we will see a future paper in terms of the additional money that we have to spend. So is everyone in agreement? Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. Agreed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Willie. That's the end of the area committee.